Good morning friends, Sat Sri Akal, Adab, Namaskar. This is in continuation to my earlier video of Excision only. This is my 110th video. Now in this video I will not be touching the Cantonment Act. I will be touching the Governor General orders. Now where those orders or the various doings what the British were doing when local self-area and excisions of cantonments was to be taking place, whether it was in 1793 or whether it was now. So we'll begin off with the Army Regulation 20 of 1810, which finally culminates to the Code of PWD of 1859. And we'll talk of various army regulations which are in my hand of 1855, 1877, 1880. And the last army regulation of 1887, because after that the three armies of Bombay, Madras and Bengal were amalgamated into one army, or the presidencies merged under the 1887 Queen of England's order. So where did the army first in 1855 said that limits of the cantonment are to be defined? That is section 1948. The limits of all military cantonments are to be defined by pillars of masonry erected at each angle of the boundary lines, and which are to be replaced whenever they are destroyed or are not forthcoming. So do you have for your cantonment Sikandrabad or Agra, or let's say Barrackpur, do you have those military boundary pillars? Need to work on. Similarly, under section 1949, 1949 to be more specific, boundaries of Bazar to be defined. Now, what is the present regime doing? It is saying that I will excise that area which is under Rule 2 subpara 3 of 1938. But in 1855, there were boundaries of Bazar, the boundaries of Sudder station and regimental Bazars, and of any villages within the limits of cantonments are also to be defined by pillars of masonry, and all buildings erected beyond the proper boundaries or assigned limits are to be thrown down, and the ruins to be removed with the doings of the proprietors of those lands and buildings. So, what did the army do? 1855, we had boundaries for the Bazar also. So, these two sections very clearly are saying that there were military boundary pillars and there were some civil boundary pillars. And these both merged and made a cantonment. Now, what was that cantonment? That needs to be. So, there is a presumption that which of the area has to be called civil area. Do we start from 1810 or do we start from 1938, Rule 2, subpara 3? So, friends, Cantonment Act, when it was first given to us in 1864, it very clearly said that there is going to be some area which will be called the military boundary pillars and some area which will be called the civil boundary pillars or the cantonment boundary pillars. Now, earlier I have already said what was the British India within those military stations and where did the local government or the executive was working. Rule 6 I have explained, Rule 10 I have explained in that video. Now we'll come straight to the Cantonment Act 1864. Now section 4 said the local government with the previous sanctions of the Governor General and Council may by notification in an official gazette declare any place in which any of Her Majesty regular forces are quartered within the territories administered by such government to be a cantonment for the purpose of this act and of all other enactments for the time being in force and may withdraw any such declaration. So way back in 1864. it had said this, it will either withdraw or either influx. So both the things could be done. Section 5 said, for any cantonment beyond the limits of the presidency town, there shall be a cantonment authority and a cantonment magistrate. So now this presidency town is a very peculiar word being used in most of the acts from 1864. So what is this presidency town? And I'll explain it in the coming paragraphs. Section 6 said that the expression cantonment authority is used in this Act of 1880 means a cantonment committee, or in case of a cantonment for which such a committee has not been constituted, the commanding officer of that cantonment will be the president of it. So that means there was a civil committee. Section 6A, the cantonment authority shall be deemed to be a local authority as defined under the Local Authorities Loan Act of 1879, the Cattle Trespass Act of 1871, the Indian Telegraphic Act of 1885, or the Journal Clauses Act of 1887. Now 1887, and where did I say 1887 the three presidencies merged? So then the Journal Clauses Act is also talking that there was a cantonment authority, and it was a local authority which could be called a municipality. So we were already being governed by a municipality way back in 1864, but it was put under the regime of a cantonment authority or a cantonment magistrate. That's all. Section 32 again is speaking of what? Section 54, para 2(3), section 59, 107 and 13 of the TP Act. So that means TP Act was also applicable, because in 1887 or 1888, 1882 TP Act had already come. So all instruments registered under the Registration Act of 1867 was supposed to be now registered under the TP Act. Now where does this say? Section 32 subpara 2 speaks of it. So what is that presidency town which I just spoke above? And what is that CLA Rule 2 subpara 3 of 1937 civil area? So these need to be understood. I'll subject you to a book called J.P. Mittal. You must read his 1924 Cantonment Act edition 1988 if some people have it. In that area he is specifically dealing with an area called Governor General orders and the local area. Now I'll read those paragraphs. Now he is reading in Rule 2, general orders for the Governor General from anywhere and their orders to be obeyed. The word cantonment or military cantonment initially had the connotation of a place where the military and their followers and families were quartered, and where in no private interest in lands, excluding the buildings, subsisted. It acquired a new meaning with the introduction of the municipal administration and the enactment of the Cantonment Act 1889. So I am not saying anything. It is J.P. Mittal rebrushing these facts in his own book. This encompassed a local area which could have government and private lands in the jurisdiction for a purpose of the cantonment administration. Does this make clear? Do we need to prove anything more? Can't we make representations? Can't we fight it out now? That yes, 1889 or 1880 or 1864, these local areas were all those areas where private lands were. So thus, wherever cantonments have been delimited after 1889, within the newly incorporated area there could be, and there really are, private lands. So that is why, friends, please make sure that excision of 2022 does not happen like 1977 of Ambala cantonment. we must make sure that these lands in the civil area or the local administration would be with the owners itself. We were the original owners of these private lands. Earlier to this, no private ended property was to be included within the limits of the cantonment as per Government General Order of 1832. While enactment of the Cantonment Act 1889, all these declarations, rules and licenses were supposed to be imposed on under the Cantonment Code of 1899. So we need to understand what is actually saying. Now Rule 6.4, subordinate legislation rules known as the Cantonment Code 1899, which was notified. This provided a maintenance of plan of the cantonment as well as registers of government lands and private lands and grants of leases of those building sites. So that means everything was there in 1899. There were private lands. So we need to wake up. Rule 6.6 says the revenue authorities are almost not maintaining any land records for cantonments. So honestly, they are admitting that there are no land records with the local revenue authority. Let's say Cantonment A Allahabad is being excised to the Allahabad Municipal Corporation. Does that Allahabad Municipal Corporation or the Tahsildar or the SDM or the DC maintain any jamabandis or hasbas or any record for these cantonments? No. So if this land gets excised, who will and from where will the land record come? Again, are we subjected to the GLR? No, this GLR is defunct. It is not being maintained as per the rules laid under the 1925 and 1937 CLA rules. So we cannot accept this GLR as the culmination or as the authority of this land record. So once that is not there, so we need to fight it. So friends, I think now it is very clear what are we looking for. Are we going by the Cantonment Act? Are we going by the Governor General Orders, which I have just explained, and the Cantonment Acts of 1864? Let's merge all of them. And then we will understand that we are freehold properties. Even if we were old grants, I've been always saying we were never converted into new grants. So the Dave report made for in 1977 for the excision of Ambala area gives us no benefit. All what has happened is that I was Ronnie Das, son of late Shri Shyam Sundar Das. Now I will be Ronnie Das, son of late Shri Haryana Municipal Corporation. So nothing changes. So please don't live in the fool's paradise that government is doing something very big of excising. Yes, excision will happen, good, but it should happen in a complete format. Thank you, and please understand these videos. Good day. Namaskar.